With it being Thanksgiving week, I'm on the road with my family, so I'm not posting new episodes. Instead, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this week, I'm sharing different compilations of your most listened to My Good 3 episodes. So I'll see you with a new show the Monday after Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for being a listener. I hope everyone takes a moment this week to check in with how much they're thankful for. I know I will. I hope you enjoy. Modern neuroscience tells us that instead of writing down things we're thankful for in a journal, simply listening to and connecting with positive stories about people can better help shift our immune system into balance. It can help us move from a state of constant anxiety towards motivation. So 3 days a week, I'm sharing stories we can feel good about. Mondays, you'll hear a story from the past to be thankful for. On Wednesdays, I'll tell an inspiring story from the present. And Fridays, you'll head into the weekend with a story to keep you optimistic about our future. Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome to My Good 3. All right, happy Friday. Did you wake up this morning thinking about whales? Yeah, me neither. Well, there are people who did. While whales are out of sight and out of mind for most of us, people all around the world have been fighting to protect the largest animal on Earth. This is not a story about the species that made a comeback after being down to the last 1% of its population. This is a story about what saving whales has taught us about our power, collectively and individually, to protect the things we care about. I have to admit that I know very little about blue whales, so as I dug into this story, I needed to do some research on the basics. What I found surprised me. For instance, while I think I knew that the blue whale is actually the largest animal on Earth, I didn't know that it's the largest animal to have ever existed on Earth. Larger than dinosaurs, by a lot. A mature blue whale can be 100 feet long and weigh nearly 350,000 pounds. The size of 40 elephants. I also learned that commercial whaling only became a major issue between 1920 and 1970, as technology improved so much that it made finding and killing whales fairly easy. Globally, fishermen were profiting greatly from the meat, considered to be an alternative to beef, and selling the oil for candles and other byproducts. By the 1970s, the anti-whaling movement was rolling. But the population of blue whales was estimated to be down to roughly 2,000, a number that nearly spelled the extinction of the species. While it took some time to reach critical mass, there was a unified effort by the majority of countries to ban the practice of commercial whaling globally. And finally, in 1986, the International Whaling Commission, or IWC, with 78 member nations, did just that. The tipping point occurred when word spread around the globe about the near extinction of the blue whale and the reasons behind it. In many countries where the governments refused to adhere to the ban, individual consumers rejected whale products out of principle, which then eventually led to their governments changing course and banning commercial whaling. Individuals all around the globe voted at one time, simply by their choices at markets and restaurants, collectively putting the whaling industry out of business. So fast forward to 2024. What we've seen recently in the blue whale population is remarkable. Blue whale sightings are occurring in places that haven't been in decades. Off the coast of Canada, in the shallow waters off the eastern United States, not to mention the population is surging in the Antarctic. It's estimated that between 10,000 and 25,000 blue whales are alive today. Recent tagging data and acoustic monitoring indicate it's actually growing, and to me, this is really exciting. While we're still a long way from the pre-whaling population of roughly 300,000 blue whales, the species isn't going to disappear. You may be asking, how is this story supposed to take me into the weekend feeling hopeful for our future? Well, like I said, it's about more than just whales. It's a reminder that we have control over the direction of things. And when I say we, I don't just mean governments and the people on inflatable boats in the Southern Ocean banging on the hulls of whaling vessels. I mean we as consumers. We can solve ecological, environmental, and political problems in a short period of time if we truly care about something. I've never been one to consider joining Greenpeace or protest the hunting of an endangered species on my state's Capitol lawn. But I do think about the votes I make with my purchase decisions at the store. The way I look at it, the saving of blue whales offers hope that we, collectively and individually, have enough power and influence to reverse course on mistakes. Because if our purchasing decisions as individuals can help save an underwater mammal the size of 40 elephants, what can't we do? All right, happy Friday. Are you cynical? I mean, sometimes at least. We all get burned by people, and it can snowball. It's natural to feel that way. And with the state of politics and the way the media's learned to profit from cynical headlines, many of us have become cynical even without realizing it. Well, I'm learning there is good news for people like me. Being cynical isn't permanent. In fact, becoming less cynical can happen in a short period of time. And from what I understand, it will absolutely change your life for the better. I'd like to start by identifying the difference between pessimism and cynicism. Pessimism is when you expect the worst in situations. It's a lot like despair and hopelessness, and we know when we're feeling that way. Cynicism, more or less, is when you expect the worst in people. Now, pessimism isn't pretty, and it can be very detrimental to your life. But with cynicism, it's sneakier. You can think that you're happy, but actually, it's unknowingly leading you to desolation. What makes it difficult is the road to cynicism is a fairly easy road to find. When you get hurt by people enough times, which is bound to happen, a natural response is to protect yourself from it happening again. And cynicism is a wonderful barrier. It seems like it protects you. The problem is, cynicism is like carbon monoxide, a silent killer. The statistics? Cynics are 3 times more likely to develop dementia, 5 times more likely to develop depression. And when it comes to careers, cynics tend to make less money and have a lower career trajectory. So, are you cynical? According to Jamil Zaki, director of the Social Neuroscience Lab at Stanford University, whether or not you agree with these 3 statements is a quick way to find out. 1. No one cares much about what happens to me. 2. Most people dislike helping others. And 3. Most people are honest, but mainly because of their fear of getting caught. Professor Zaki says, if you disagree with all 3 of those statements, you're probably not a cynic. If you agree with one of those 3, you're moderately cynical. And if you agree with 2 or more, you're on the high end of cynical. Now for the good news. Cynicism is not a fixed trait. If you scored as cynical, there are things you can do to adjust the way you see the world. And by doing these things, you can change course fairly quickly. According to Zaki's new book, Hope for Cynics, The Surprising Science of Human Goodness, he outlines 3 practices that can help you break out from being cynical. First, he says to stop glamorizing the idea of cynicism. Being negative doesn't make you right or moral, and it doesn't keep you safe. Second, try to be more like a scientist. Search for evidence to prove or disprove your conclusions about people and situations. Try to consistently ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? And third, give people a chance to show you who they are. Before assuming the worst about someone, give them a chance to prove you wrong or right. Zaki says, we underestimate how trustworthy, generous, friendly, and open-minded people are. From my standpoint, I think the biggest mistake people make is in thinking that in order to no longer be a cynic, they have to suddenly become an optimist. And when I hear optimist, I tend to think of someone who's naive and easily exploited. It's not one or the other. You don't need to suddenly be an idealist to stop being a cynic. That distinction helps me. There are always going to be questionable people with not so great intentions out there, and we need to remove ourselves from those people as much as possible. But by giving in and letting them corrupt our way of seeing the world, a world that, believe it or not, is filled with wonderful people, we're only hurting ourselves. As we start our weekends, it's a great opportunity to take inventory of how cynical we are. And if we're high on the scale, there are real things we can do to adjust and see the world in a healthier way, all without losing our edge. This in turn will improve our health and our likelihood for career and personal success. And that thought alone gives me hope. A while ago, I came across a quote from Tom Hanks, one of my favorite celebrities. To me, he seems like someone who's grounded, who lives in reality, but at the same time, he's still positive and hopeful about people in our future. What he said was, "I understand the concept of optimism, but I think with me, what you get is a lack of cynicism." Alright, happy Friday. Have you ever tried really hard at a relationship? Pushed harder and harder, almost to the point of exhaustion, and then realized that the harder you pushed, the worse the relationship became? This is a story about how, in some instances, the path to results can be counterintuitive. Much like how things in nature tend to find equilibrium, things in our lives, specifically our work lives, need balance. Right now, there's momentum for an idea about improving balance at work that might give you a little bit of hope. It's actually more than an idea. It's starting to happen at companies around the globe. This is something your friends, your kids, your pets, and your sanity might be thankful for. Alright, I'm going to list a few work-related scenarios and see if any of them resonate. Waking up and immediately going to your emails. Eating lunch at your desk. Checking Slack while spending time with the people you care about. Laying in bed with a laptop, tapping away at your keyboard while the person next to you does the same. These things weren't happening 20 years ago, and a lot of us these days are feeling a bit squeezed. The result? It's affecting our mental health, our physical health, and what scares employers more than anything, our motivation and productivity at the office. For years, we've seen the problem coming, with work following us around in our pockets and the demands at home increasing due to all sorts of factors. Burnout is on the rise for workers worldwide. For a while now, think tanks have researched ways to help, and we've seen companies try to find solutions. Years ago, there was an effort to try to make the office more fun. So companies bought foosball tables, allowed employees to bring their dogs to work, and provided free snacks. There was unlimited time off, which as it turns out often results in less vacation time being taken by employees, compounding the problem. There was the remote work is the future phase that came about during the pandemic, which people thought might be the answer, but has since been walked back by many companies. They saw a dip in collaboration and company culture. So many companies right now are settled into a hybrid model, which has helped to some degree, but there's still room for improvement. An idea that's always been in the background simmering, and in the last year has reached a full-blown boil across the globe, is something we've all heard about here and there, and probably dismissed because it seemed unfeasible. The idea of a 4-day work week. Before getting into how this momentum is building and why, my initial reaction as someone who's been in leadership positions at companies is that this is going to fail. Companies can't lose productivity, and by cutting an entire day, that is surely going to happen. But I have to say, after reading the findings about a variety of real companies overseas and here in the US switching to a 4-day work week, I'm intrigued. In 2022, there was a study in the UK by the organization's 4-Day Week campaign and 4-Day Week Global, and conducted by the think tank Autonomy, where 61 companies agreed to move their employees to a 4-day work week for a 6-month trial. The companies varied in size and industry, and they were asked to provide qualitative and quantitative feedback on metrics, from employee well-being to productivity to financial success. At the end of the trial, the data was released, and it was overwhelmingly positive. Turnover drastically decreased, well-being skyrocketed, and so had recruitment. At the end of the 6 months, 92% of the participating companies had confirmed that they were going to continue the policy after the trial. Of course, this was promising, but by no means was one 6-month study enough to convince many other companies to make the shift. What was more interesting was what they found when the companies were offered to participate in a follow-up study another year later. 90% of the companies surveyed were still operating the policy, and they were seeing remarkable results. They had streamlined processes, cut unnecessarily long meeting times, decreased irrelevant communications, and fine-tuned their priorities. This all led to an improvement in company productivity, employee mental health, and general wellness. The companies were thriving. As an American, sometimes I think that while things may work in Europe and elsewhere, they won't work in the United States. Well, in this case, American companies who participated in similar trials saw similar results. One example is Exos, a US-based coaching and performance company who introduced You Do You Fridays. The policy guides employees to take care of what they need to, whether it's work or personal, with the only rule being that they can't message other people or set up meetings on Friday. With the help of organizational psychologist Adam Grant and Wharton Business School doctoral candidate Marissa Chandel, they found significant benefits that mirror what other studies have shown. Before getting too excited, I know that a 4-day work week doesn't work for all companies, such as those in certain service businesses, or for many blue-collar shift workers. Still, the momentum of this idea gives me hope. It might simply materialize in the form of fewer meetings 1 day a week for some companies, or maybe it'll be adopted as a full-blown extra day off. Either way, what the results are showing is, like what we see when we give an intense relationship a little bit of space, sometimes knowing when to back off a bit could prove to be the push some companies and their employees need to grow. Thank you for listening. I realize this podcast won't be successful without your help. So if you'd like to rate it, or better yet, review it, wherever you get your podcasts, that would really help. And if you're on Instagram, go to @mygood3, THREE, to vote each episode up or down. I'm also excited to read more Good 3 stories from listeners. So just go to our website, mygood3.com, and submit a story of your own from the past, present, or future, or all three. And maybe I'll use it in an episode. Thanks again. Here's to hoping My Good 3 can set the stage for your good week.